I welcome you all to the module 7 of this course titled Applied Positive Psychology. So, the module 7 is about meaning and purpose in life. So, that is the main concept that we will be focusing on in this module, and today's lecture is lecture number 18, and this is the first lecture of this module. So, we will be talking about the concept of meaning and purpose in life. We will be talking some of the concepts associated with this whole idea of meaning and purpose, and some of the theoretical propositions around that. So, this will be mostly of conceptual clarity around the concept of meaning and purpose in life. So, before we talk about today's lecture, let me give you a brief recap of the last lecture, which was lecture number 17, which was part of the earlier module. So, in the last lecture, that is lecture number 17, we talked about the concept of post traumatic growth, or in short it is called PTG, and we discussed the various concepts associated with the concept of post traumatic growth, some of the related concepts. We also talked about the different domains of post traumatic growth. We also discussed what are the different types of traumatic event that can lead to post traumatic growth. We also discussed models of post traumatic growth, and we also discussed how PTG, well-being and wisdom are connected to each other, and at the end we discussed how can we facilitate PTG. So, these are some of the major concepts we discussed in the last lecture. So, talking about today's lecture, that is lecture number 18, we will be focusing on the concept of meaning in life. We will talk about 3 core dimensions of meaning in life from the perspective of research and literature, and we will be talking about how meaning in life is related to well-being. So, let us start today's lecture. So, there are 2 concepts when we talk about meaning of life. So, these 2 terms we need to distinguish. One is meaning of life versus meaning in life. So, these are the 2 connotations, 2 concepts associated with the idea of meaning in life. So, one is meaning of life and another is meaning in life. So, let us see how these 2 terms are different from each other. So, when we talk about meaning of life, this is more of a philosophical quest to find answer to a lot of these metaphysical questions, such as why life and universe exist, what is its purpose. So, these are very metaphysical, theological question that people try to address, that why there is an existence, why there is a life on earth, why this universe exists and so on. So, meaning of life as a concept is associated with all these metaphysical questions related to the existence and so on. Now, such question generally cannot be scientifically investigated using scientific methodology, and hence these are not really studied in the field of psychology. Psychology is more inquiry oriented discipline, more empirical discipline. So, a lot of these philosophical questions which cannot be addressed using scientific methodology, generally psychologists are not interested in those questions. So, when we talk about meaning of life, which is associated with all these metaphysical questions, why life exists, why universe exists, what is the purpose of all this grand plan and so on, such questions are difficult to answer. These are mostly comes in the field of philosophy and so on, and theology and so on. But when we talk about the concept of meaning in life, this is a concept that is more aligned with the discipline of psychology. So, when we talk about meaning in life, we are talking about it is a subjective experience of human beings when we ask question what makes these experiences meaningful in their lives. Psychologists are more interested in these concepts. So, when we talk about meaning in life, it is everybody's quest to find out what is the purpose of their existence. So, it is a very subjective concept. When we try to find out what is the purpose of my existence, whatever I am doing, is there any direction to it, is there any purpose to it, do I have a broader meaning in life. So, this is a very individualistic subjective quest to find meaning of life within that individual life domain. So, that is where we try to understand what makes the experiences of an individual meaningful, what are the ingredients associated with that. This is something we can understand and explore using scientific inquiry, scientific methodology, by asking people what makes their life meaningful. It could be very subjective and different from person to person. So, this meaning in life is more aligned with the discipline of psychology, and psychologists are more interested in the concept of meaning in life and not meaning of life per se. So, this is how we should understand the difference between these 2 terms. Now, let us look into this concept of meaning in life, which psychologists are more interested in. Let us go deeper into this idea of meaning in life. So, there are many ideas around it. Some of the statements given by some renowned personalities I will just share here. Carl Jung said life exists only when there is a meaning. So, when there is a meaning, you attribute certain meaning to your existence, then life exists. Leo Tolstoy said the sole meaning of life is to serve humanity. So, this is his definition. If you are serving humanity and making contribution to the greater life, just not your own life, then your life is meaningful. This is how he defined it. Viktor Frankl, who we will be discussing in detail about his ideas, because he is one of the key figure in the whole research of meaning in life in psychology. He said, for the meaning of life differs from man to man, from day to day, and from hour to hour. So, he is saying meaning in life is not a fixed concept. It keeps changing from person to person, from time to time. We can create new meanings in our life as we progress in our life. So, what matters therefore is not the meaning of life in general, but rather the specific meaning of a person's life at a given moment. So, what he is saying that it is more important to understand what kind of meaning is attributed by the person or created by the person in a particular moment in their life. Well, that is what matters. So, we will talk about Viktor Frankl ideas in more detail in this lecture as well as in the upcoming lectures. So, both psychologists and philosophers emphasize meaning in life as crucial dimension of human life. So, this is something very important. As a human being, we do not just exist to survive. We also try to create a meaningful life, because this is very important in terms of having a purposeful life, having a life with directions, and that is what is also connected to our sense of well-being also. So, many psychologists, psychological scholars have said that all humans strive towards meaning in terms of need to understand the world, to know our place in it, and to have a purpose and goals. All human beings try to create these important aspects of meaning in life in terms of trying to understand their world, what is their place in it, how to have more purpose and goals in life, and so on. Philosophers such as Descartes and Camus have suggested that humans have a fundamental motive to make sense of their experiences. We all try to make sense of our experiences, whatever experiences we have in our life from day to day life, we all try to make sense of them, why it is happening to me, what is the purpose to it, what can I learn from these experiences. So, these are the things constantly that goes on in human mind, gives meaning in their life. Viktor Frankl, as we already talked about him, he even proposed that seeking meaning is crucial not only for well-being, but also even for survival. He said meaning is not just required to have higher well-being in our life, it is also important for our survival. If you do not see the meaning of your existence, then probably it will be difficult to survive also. So, he is linking it to a deeper survival process. Now, here is the photograph of Viktor Frankl. The scientific study of meaning in life, more systematic study actually started from his ideas. Viktor Frankl's seminal work on man's search for meaning. This is a book which is one of the bestseller books still available. He was a prisoner of Nazi concentration camp, and he in detail talked about his experiences in the prisons of Nazi concentration camps, and how he survived, how other people survived even though there was no apparent reason to survive when you were in a concentration camp. We all know what has happened to the concentration camp. So, this book talks about the meaning of man's search for meaning, how people search meaning even in the dire circumstances where there is no hope in situations like concentration camps and so on. So, this is a beautiful book which talks about how people's search for meaning is a crucial aspect for survival and well-being. So, Viktor Frankl is commonly cited in meaning in life research as one of the central figure and founding inspiration in a lot of other theories that evolved out of meaning in life research. Frankl argued that people function best when they perceive a sense of meaning and possesses a life purpose, a unique mission to strive for throughout their lives. He developed a school of psychotherapy called logotherapy, which is aimed at helping people to find meaning in their life. So, Viktor Frankl, he looked at this whole sense of meaning in life, how it helps them to survive, how it helps them to experience well-being and so on. And this is something very unique to human being in terms of they always try to create meaning in their life. And out of this understanding, he developed a school of psychotherapy which is called as logotherapy, that is primarily addressed or aimed at understanding or creating meaning in the life of clients, because many times it is because of the lack of meaning, that existential vacuum that happens, which leads to a lot of psychological disorders, depression and so on. So, if people can find more meaning in their life, probably they will have better well-being and so on. So, the logotherapy basically looks at that aspect of human functioning. So, a meaningful life is often depicted as superior, less common and more morally virtuous compared to happy life. Even when we talk about a happy life, in lot of these philosophical literatures and theologies, meaningful life is always considered as a superior life. It is more towards eudaimonic well-being than just a happy life, because meaningful life contributes to greater good and so on. So, let us look at some of the more research based definitions or definition that emerged out of researches and so on about the meaning in life. Now, although we have a consensus that meaning in life is very important in human functioning, human well-being and survival, however, the definitions and operationalization, how to measure it is still lot of debates around it. There is not much consensus on it. Have varied lot of this across theories and empirical works, lot of definitions are available. So, although the importance is very evident, but how to define it, sometimes scholars may disagree from each other and so on. Now, let us give some of the definitions of meaning in life that emerged from the research literature. Some of it is listed here. One is meaning is about making sense of life. So, this is one thing. When you are saying meaning in life, you are basically trying to make sense of your life. What is this life is all about? So, when you try to make sense of it, try to evaluate it. So, that is what gives meaning in life. Another is meaning is primarily nurtured by goal directed behavior. So, this is what talks about if you have a goal in life and you are working towards it, it will give you meaning in life. Another definition is meaning is linked to transcendent and spiritual concern. So, meaning in life can also be derived when you are working towards some spiritual pursuits, some transcendental realities, that also gives meaning in life when you pursue something greater realities and so on. Another definition is meaning comes from a sense of self-worth, efficacy, self-justifications and purpose and so on. Meaning also comes in one's life when you have a higher self-worth, you have a decent self-worthiness, you feel you are worthy, you are doing something meaningful, you have a justification for what you are doing, you have a purpose in life, then generally people perceive their life to be meaningful and so on. So, these are some of the definitions given by different researchers. King and colleagues in 2006 summarized some of the scholarly definitions of meaning as follows. Lives may be experienced as meaningful when they are felt to have significance beyond the trivial or momentary, to have a purpose or to have a coherence that transcends chaos. This is like summarization of lot of these definitions into one statement. So, lives, we can experience our life as more meaningful when we feel it as significant. We feel our life is significant, we are doing contributing to something greater, not just spending life on trivial and momentary things. When your life has significance beyond short term and trivial things, then it is experienced as meaningful. When you have a purpose in life, you have a direction, you have a goal, you have a sense of coherence, you are able to make sense of what is happening in your life, then the life is generally experienced as meaningful. This is like summarization of lot of these specific definitions that we discussed. Similarly, Steger also defined meaning as the web of connections, understandings and interpretation that help us comprehend our experience and formulate plans directing our energies to the achievement of our desired future. Meaning provides us with a sense that our lives matter, that they make sense, and what they are more than sum of our seconds, days and years. So, this is something very important in the last statement. When you are able to perceive your life as sensible, it makes sense, it matters, your life matters, maybe because what you are doing, or maybe because there are loved ones that you feel your life matters, or when you feel your life is not just sum of the individual time that you are spending, it is more than that. So, more of a holistic perception of your life can give you something called as a more meaning in your life. So, these are all different definitions. Somewhere there is a common thread also that talks about what are the important aspects that leads to meaning in life, or experiences of meaning in life. Now, when we talk about all these definitions, researchers generally agree that meaning in life has three important dimensions or three important aspects. All these three aspects actually contribute to the meaning of life. So, these are the three important dimensions that we talk about when we talk about meaning in life. One is meaning in life is about coherence. Second is meaning in life is about purpose. Meaning in life is about significance. So, these are the three important dimensions that captures all the aspects of meaning in life into these three dimensions. So, whatever we talk about meaning in life, in whatever way, they will come under one of these three, or maybe combination of these three. So, let us look into these three dimensions. So, basically when we talk about meaning in life, we are talking about coherence, purpose and significance. So, this can be have three important aspects. So, this whole concept of meaning in life can be defined using all these three dimensions or combination of these three dimensions. So, let us look into the first dimension, which is called as a coherence. So, what is coherence? Coherence, life is coherent when one is able to understand patterns in it, when you are able to make sense of it. Whatever events happening, whatever things happening in your life, when you see patterns, you can understand them, you can make sense of them, then your life has coherence and it contributes to meaning of life. You feel more, your life is more meaningful because you are able to understand what is happening in your life. So, life is experienced more coherent when you are able to understand your life, or find a patterns in what is happening, or make sense of what is happening, or you feel life is comprehensible, you are able to understand things. So, that gives a sense of meaning in life when you are able to experience coherence. So, when you talk about coherence, it is about the feeling that one's experiences or life itself makes sense. Then coherence is experienced, which leads to meaning in life. It is about making sense of one's life to make it comprehensible and coherent. So, this is what is coherence all about. So, when we feel coherence in our life, it contributes to more meaningful life. So, this is one important dimension. It is more of a cognitive component, means you think about it, try to make sense of it by evaluating your life. So, we try to evaluate things in our life using a lot of thought processes, belief system and so on, which ultimately leads to making sense of the things or experiences of our life. Some researchers made an assumption that humans have an inherent need to make sense of their environment, and we experience distress in situations where meaning is disrupted, stimulating our innate capacity to construct meaning to become activated. So, There is a natural inherent tendency in all of us that we try to make sense of things that happens in our life. Whenever we are not able to understand something, or something bad happens, something traumatic happens, we always ask why this is happening to me, because this question is coming because we are not able to make sense at that time, why such a thing should happen in my life. So, you ask why, with the idea that you are trying to make sense of it. So, this inherent need to make sense is a very inherent need within all individual. We all try to make sense of our events in our own individual ways, and we experience distress, uncomfortable situation we experience when we are not able to make sense of things that are happening, particularly like traumatic event, very difficult situations in one's life can disrupt meaning in our life. So, when we are able to make sense of things, we are creating more coherence in our life. Next is purpose as an important dimensions of meaning in life. So, purpose is something most of the people in the layman term use it synonymously with the meaning in life. Whenever we talk about meaning in life, purpose is like synonymously used. But technically, what is the meaning of purpose here? More specifically, purpose is a dimensions of meaning and refers to specifically to having direction and future oriented goals in life. So, purpose is mostly about the people will experience purpose in their life when they see a direction in their life, when they have goals in their life and they approach towards those future oriented goals. So, purpose is more about looking in the future, setting goals and working towards it. Then people experience life has a purpose. Viktor Frankl specifically used purpose to connote meaning in life. Viktor Frankl gave lot of importance to this dimension. Some definitions related to purpose include purpose in life is about having goals in life and a sense of directedness. So, when you have a direction in life, goals in life and you work towards it, you experience life as purposeful life. Purpose is also about a sense of core goals, direction in life, enthusiasm regarding the future and so on. It is a very future oriented concept. When you have some goals in future, work towards it, have a direction to reach there, then we experience purpose in life and it contributes to meaning in life. So, despite some differences in definition, researchers on purpose in life seem to agree that it is essentially about some future oriented aim and goals that give direction to life. These overarching goals then lend significance to one's present actions. So, you have a goal in future, therefore, the present action becomes significant. It contributes to meaning in one's life. So, this is the second dimension. First was coherence, second was purpose, third is significance, or sometimes another word is used called mattering. Your life matters, or significance. Significance, mattering as an important dimensions of meaning in life. So, significance has been understood as to be about the worthwhileness and values of one's life. If you experience your life is valuable, your life is worthwhile, your life is significant, your life has some meaning, value to your life, you experience it for whatever reason, whatever things you are doing, maybe because you have loved ones who are perceiving you as important person, or you are doing something important, whatever the source may be, but whenever you experience your life as worthwhile, significant, there is a value to your life, then we experience significance or we experience mattering. Some researchers such as George and Park use the term mattering for this aspect of meaning. So, this means same thing, significance or mattering. Significance or mattering is mostly defined as a value-laden evaluations of one's life as a whole regarding how important, worthwhile and inherently valuable it feels. So, the more you feel your life is worthwhile, it is important, it is valuable, the more you experience significance in your life and more you experience meaning in life. So, significance is related to meaning in life. So, this is another important dimension. So, to experience meaning or mattering is to feel that one's life has some profound and lasting importance. An individual with a low sense of mattering may feel that his or her existence carries little significance and that one's non-existence would make no impact to the world. Many times people, for example, in the state of depression also feels that their life is not significant. They do not matter whether they exist or they do not exist. For whatever reason, if they think like that, that means that significance dimension is lower in their perspective. So, therefore, meaning in life is lower. So, when one feels their life is meaningful, valuable, whatever they are doing or whatever relationship they have and so on, whenever they feel such profound lasting importance, that contributes to significance or mattering to their life. So, this aspect of meaning received less empirical attention as compared to others. So, if you look at empirical research, this aspect received relatively less attention as compared to purpose and coherence. Now, mattering is more connected to bigger existential question whether human life has any inherent value in the larger scheme of things. Sometimes this whole dimensions of significance is also looked at larger philosophical question that we talked about under the concept of meaning of life. So, that can be related to some of these aspects. It is also possible that many cases of depression and suicide may be connected to low sense of mattering or significant. This is a very typical symptoms of depression and suicidal tendencies. People with suicidal tendency, they feel their life is meaningless in the sense of that their life has no significance. They do not matter whether they exist or they do not exist. So, that is a typical aspects of lack of meaning connected with depression and suicidal ideations and so on. However, on a positive note, research shows most people do not go through life with sense that their lives do not matter. Research shows that for most of the people, fortunately, they experience their life as significant. They feel their life matters. Neither they do continuously question whether their lives matter, They also do not continuously question whether their life matters or not. They generally feel that whatever the limited conditions of their life, they matter. So, generally people do not experience, for most of the people they experience significance in their life, which is a good thing, because lack of this may lead to depression and other thing. Rather, most people also assume their lives matter. It is an assumption that people think that my life is important, valuable. It is an assumption that is unconsciously people have it. In fact, things and close people in our life gives us a sense of specialness and uniqueness and permanence. One of the reason for this could be that whoever close people around us, they make us feel special. Because of their love, their connection, their support, we feel our life is important, significant, valuable. One of the primary reason is the loved one that we have around us. They make us feel special, significant and so on. So, that is something very important. A sense of significance or mattering may be particularly adapted during the crisis and traumatic situation. So, whenever we feel problems in our life, traumatic situations in life, crisis in life, this sense of significance is something is very important, which can contribute to survival in such situations. Trauma literature indicate that people often consider traumatic event as pointless or without significance while coping with it. People often look for a sense of significance and positive value in the event in order to better cope with. A lot of this trauma literature says that one of the way people try to cope with traumatic situations or challenges in their life is to find significance or some positive value in the event. So, that is what basically they are trying to increase this value of aspects of significance. Literature also suggests that maintaining a sense of mattering or even positive illusions such as exaggerated sense of control, optimism facilitates coping and mental health. So, this sense of significance is very important in the context of coping or dealing with the problems of life, traumatic situations of life, challenges in life. If you try to make evaluate things or difficult situations or traumatic events in such a way that you feel significant in your life matters and so on, then one is more likely to cope better. So, these are the three important dimensions of meaning. All these three dimensions contributed to meaning in our life, or combination of these three can contribute to meaning in our life. So, that is why these are the three separate dimensions. Individually they contribute to meaning in life, or in combination also they contribute to meaning in life. Now, let us try to separate these three dimensions, how they are different from each other in terms of some basic nature, basic aspects. So, this is one statement from Martella and Stiger, which tries to separate these three dimensions. So, they are saying coherence dimension is value neutral and descriptive. So, when one is trying to make sense of their life, there is no value neutral in a sense that you are not using it as a kind of what is the value of life and so on. You are just trying to make sense of it, just trying to evaluate it, try to describe it. So, it is more of a descriptive and value neutral dimension. Whereas, purpose and significance are more evaluative and normative. You feel your life has a more purpose and significance, mostly we do it by comparison with some norms. When you feel your life is better than someone else probably, or better than whatever standard you feel your life should have. So, there is a normative aspects to it. Then you feel your life has purpose, your life has significance, generally by comparison with certain norms or certain standards that you set for yourself, or maybe from whatever you pick from the society and so on. So, these are more significance and purpose dimensions are more evaluative, you evaluate them more and they are more normative. So, there may be some norms with which you compare yourself, and that leads to higher purpose or significance or lower purpose or lower significance. Coherence is about describing the world as it appears to the individual. So, we try to find coherence by describing, trying to make sense, by trying to using our thought processes and so on. On the other hand, significance and purpose aim to find values in the world, in the present as well as in the world that might arise from the pursuit of one's purpose. So, significance and purpose, they try to find values in the world, in the present as well as whatever may arise in the future and so on. So, human effort to find coherence is thus an attempt to create accurate mental models of the world to facilitate predictability and consistency. So, coherence is about making one's life more predictable, more consistent based on making sense of the events. Human effort to find significance and purpose in turn is an attempt to find justification for one's action, enduring foundation for self-worth and worthwhile pursuit and so on. So, coherence is about making your life more predictable, consistent. Significance and purpose is more about finding justifications for whatever you are doing, why you are doing something. So, you may doing it to increase purpose in life or making your life more significant and so on. So, these are some of the aspects in which they differ, all these three dimensions. So, in tabular form, this is just showing how they are different. Most of the things we have discussed in the earlier slide. So, coherence is descriptive, value neutral, purpose and significance are evaluative and normative. Focus of coherence is understanding and describing the world as it appears to the individual. Purpose and significance is about finding value in the world and shaping meaningful future. Coherence is about creating accurate mental models of predictability and consistency. Purpose is about justifying actions, establishing self-worth, identifying meaningful pursuit and so on. Coherence is more present focus. Purpose and significance extend to the future also. Coherence is about providing a structured, comprehensible view of reality. Purpose and significance provides motivation, direction and sense of worth in one's life. Example could be in the case of coherence, understanding why event happens in life. For example, recognizing patterns in experiences. Examples of purpose and significance would be here identifying meaningful goals such as helping others or contributing to society and so on. So, these are some of the examples how these dimensions may differ in their how they are conceptualized and so on. Now, these three dimensions are also connected to each other, even though they are discussed in a separate isolated ways, they are actually interconnected to each other, one can contribute to other. So, these dimensions of coherence, which is also sometimes called as comprehension, same thing, purpose, mattering or significant are distinct, but they are closely related construct. Conceptually they are distinct, but in real life they are always influencing each other and contributing to meaning in life. The experiencing of comprehension, purpose and mattering may mutually influence one another in a way that low level of one may lead to low levels in others and high level of one may lead to high levels in others. So, when one dimension increases, it is likely that this will contribute to increase in other dimensions also. For example, a low sense of comprehension dimension, which means coherence. When you are not able to make sense of your life or events in your life, that is means low sense of comprehension or coherence would make it difficult to experience a sense of direction and purpose in life. When you are not able to make sense of things in your life, how can you have a direction and purpose in life? So, low coherence will contribute to low purpose in life, and this will also further make it difficult to experience a sense of significance or mattering. When your life does not make sense, you will also experience your life also has no significance. So, probably it can impact in that way. So, low score in one may contribute to low scores in others. Similarly, the vice versa is also possible. High score in one can lead to high score in others. Similarly, a high sense of significance will make it easier to experience a life of coherence and having a direction. So, these three are very closely connected to each other and influence each other in real life. Now, let us look into how meaning in life is related to well-being from some of the empirical literature based on that. Let us look into that. So, Viktor Frankl argued that humans are characterized by a will to meaning, means there is a inherent will to find meaning in one's life. This is an inherent motivation within all human being, is an innate drive to find meaning and significance in one's life, and that failure to achieve meaning result in psychological distress. So, when you are not able to find meaning in life in whatever actions that you are doing or whatever existence you have, because inherently there is a need to find meaning. If you are not able to find that meaning, you will experience psychological problems and distress and so on. Research have supported this relationship between lack of meaning and psychological distress. So, when people experience lack of meaning in their life, they will experience more psychological distress and problems. Research has supported this statement or hypothesis. For example, having less meaning in life has been associated with people who experience less meaning in life. Research have shown it is associated with greater need for therapy. Such people experience more psychological disturbances. They also need actually more therapies to build their psychological world. They also experience more depression and anxiety. They also experience more suicidal ideation and substance abuse, another form of distress. So, these are empirical literature that shows lack of meaning could be associated with many psychological disturbances, including depression, suicidal ideation, substance abuse and so on. On the other hand, having more meaning has been positively related to the other aspects of the research, that the people who experience more meaning in their life, they report more work enjoyment. If they experience more meaning in the context of work, they experience more enjoyment in the work that they are doing. They experience or report more life satisfaction, they are more satisfied with their life. They also experience happiness, more happiness, among other measures of healthy psychological functionings. So, both the aspects or the dimensions of meaning, lack of meaning or more meaning have shown the results in the expected directions. So, according to George and Park, each dimensions of meaning in life may be associated with well-being in a specific ways. Now, these three dimensions that we talk about may be also connected to well-being in a very specific ways, which may be different from each other. So, let us look into that aspect. How coherence is related to well-being. When you talk about meaning in life, these are three dimensions. Let us talk about each dimensions, how it contributes to well-being. Broader research we have already seen. Now, let us look into each dimensions, how it possibly lead to higher well-being or lower well-being, whatever it is. Now, high comprehension or coherence may be related to better well-being through some of the following possible mechanisms. One is when one's experience high coherence, they are able to make sense of their life and events in their life. It minimizes uncertainty. Uncertainty in life is detrimental to well-being. When you experience too much of uncertainties in life, that is where you experience low coherence. You do not know how to predict anything in your life. You do not know what will happen tomorrow and so on. So, when we have such uncertainties, it leads to lower coherence. So, when you have higher coherence, it will minimize these uncertainties and lead to higher well-being. So, a higher sense of comprehension or coherence minimizes this sense of uncertainty by providing a better sense of understanding in life and day to day basis. So, by minimizing uncertainty, higher coherence increases our sense of well-being. This could be one possible mechanism. Second is greater sense of clarity. When you have more coherence, you have more clarity about life. You know what is happening, you know what to do, what are the things to do and so on. Your life is much sorted. So, higher sense of comprehension or coherence may lead to greater clarity in making choices, decision making and smooth investigation in life. So, that is how by increasing more clarity one's life, higher coherence may lead to greater well-being. The third possible mechanism is higher coherence may lead to better ability to make sense and cope with life crisis. So, this may also contribute to coping with crisis of life. Higher comprehension or coherence may facilitate making sense of life crisis and trauma with them. Whenever we face any traumatic situation, difficult situation, if you are able to make sense of them, explain them, then you are more likely to adapt to them. It is only we experience more prolonged period of distress when we are not able to make sense of things that are happening. We are not able to explain why it is happening. The moment you are able to understand why something is happening, why such events are happening in one's life, you explain it by whatever belief system you have, whatever thought processes you have, the more likely you will get adapted to them and cope with them. Very simple examples could be given. For example, let us say you appear for an interview and you fail in that interview. So, if you are not able to make sense why you failed, if you are not able to explain, let us say you have done very good, you could answer everything, but still you failed, then you are not able to explain it why I should fail, then it will give more distress in your life. You will be able to more trouble in your mind. On the other hand, let us say you failed and you can explain it very clearly that I was not well prepared, I could not answer questions. So, your explanations are very clear. So, you will adapt to it, you will not experience too much distress because you can explain it, you can make sense of it, why this has happened. On the other hand, when you are not able to make sense of it, even though you have prepared well, you could answer everything, still you have not, let us say, passed an interview and so on, it will be more disturbing to you. So, this is how it can contribute. Now, let us see how purpose in life as a dimension of meaning in life is related to well-being. So, higher purpose may impact well-being through the following mechanisms. One is higher purpose leads to greater day-to-day pursuit of valued goals. Purpose is related to goal pursuit. The more valued goals you have, you pursue future goals. So, that will lead to day-to-day pursuit of valued goals, and that pursuit and commitment to valued goals is associated with purpose, and such pursuit always leads to higher well-being when you have a sense of direction in life and so on. Greater positive emotions, when you have purpose in life, generally people experience more positive emotions. Identifying and making progress towards achieving those goals are associated with increased positive emotions. When you have clear goals and you work towards them and you proceed towards the goals, you experience more positive emotions. So, that is how purpose could be related to well-being. The third possible mechanism is that higher purpose in life leads to greater concordance between pursued goals and core values, which means higher purpose is generally associated with pursuing goals that are congruent with one's core values and identity. Such goals pursued enhances well-being. So, if you have higher purpose in life, you are more likely to find goals which you inherently like them, or there is a core values that you have in your life are congruent with those goals. And when you work towards goals which are very congruent to your own inner values, you are more likely to experience higher well-being. So, this is how purpose in life could contribute to well-being. So, meaning in life in total is related to well-being in life, higher well-being, but specific dimensions can also link to provide specific mechanisms and lead to higher well-being. So, this is what it is showing. The last one is significance and mattering, how it contributes to well-being. Now, mattering may be related to well-being in the following ways. One is that significance buffer death anxiety. The more you experience significance in your life, the less you are likely to experience death related anxieties. Research indicates that higher self-esteem, if you have more higher self-esteem, you have positive evaluation about yourself, this higher self-esteem or which leads to higher sense of significance may diminish death and or anxiety related to death or in some other general sense. So, that can also contribute to more well-being. Higher significance also leads to greater equanimity and security in the face of threat and crisis. You will be more peaceful when you experience your life as significant even at the face of threat and crisis. So, you will feel more secure, you will not be unstable, you will have more equanimity in your life. So, higher mattering may protect people from life crisis and threatening situation by providing resources such as self-esteem. When you experience higher healthy self-esteem, you do not get too much overwhelmed by the crisis situation, or things like you become more optimistic and so on. All this can help you to cope with the difficult situations, to maintain equanimity and cope with the face of difficulties and so on. So, this particular aspect of significance and mattering can also contribute to well-being. So, this is how well-being is connected to meaning in life. So, this was about some of the concepts related to meaning in life, the dimensions and how they contribute to well-being. The next lecture will be talking about more of an applied intervention perspective from the meaning in life. With this, I stop here. Thank you.